This is the 21st season of Bass Talk Live. BTL is presented by Bass Cat Boats, Strike King Lures, AFTCO, Pro Guide Batteries, Spro, Gamakatsu, The Bass Tank, Denali Rods, Beatdown Outdoors, and Sunline.
BTL coming at you.
Good morning and welcome to another exciting edition of BTL Bass Talk Live, where we are going to talk about bass fishing. First week back in the new year, kicked things off with the one and only Kevin Van Dam yesterday. Really cool interview. And I know he's been on the media tour, but talking about the KVD or the Van Dam experience. Everyone just refers to him as KVD, but the show is the Van Dam experience. Really kind of went in depth on why he did it, on what he wanted to do, on how he wanted it to be a little bit different, and then had Mark Jeffries on in the second half. Basically, we talked about bowling for an hour, but a really good interview. Big shout out to Kevin for making that happen to kick things off with arguably the greatest who has ever done it. And then we're going to kind of continue that theme. Actually, today we are going to talk about the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame, something that's near and dear to my heart. I serve on the board. So does Kevin Van Dam. He was talking yesterday on the show. He's like, if there's a fishing board committee, something, he served on it, and he is very busy. Kevin has gone out of his way to be a part of the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame. It was kind of a surreal experience at this past banquet. I basically just show up and help set up while everyone else does all the planning, but they had this box of jerseys, and there were probably 150 donated jerseys, and all those proceeds go to the Hall of Fame grants, scholarships, things like that. And Kevin just is all of a sudden there helping with me, and for 2 hours we just like put jerseys up on the wall. It was a gross misuse of Kevin Van Dam's time, but it was really cool because he would sit there and then talk. Some of the guys would pull a jersey, be like, oh, I really like this guy, and plug it up there. So, but one of the cool things that the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame offers is anybody can submit nomination for someone to be thought or were consideration for someone to be considered to go into the Hall of Fame. And those nominations are open until January 15th. So we got a couple guys. We have a actual Hall of Famer in Steve Bowman. I believe he was part of the 2020 class. And then we also have the chair of the nomination committee. Guy, if you follow bass fishing, he pops up around, especially out there in the Carolinas. Neil Paul with Visit Anderson. He's also the chair of the nomination committee. We'll bring Neil in first. Neil, thanks for jumping on BTL.
Hey, Panger, good to see you, and Happy New Year.
So if you guys have ever wondered, been like, man, that Elite Series and all those tournaments really like Lake Hartwell. Neil is one of the driving forces which has turned Lake Hartwell and that surrounding area into, I would say, one of the top 3 fishing destinations and top 3 tournament destinations in the country. And the guy that I'm looking at on the screen right there is a hugely responsible for that around that Lake Hartwell area.
Well, I appreciate that. It's Anderson County's developed Green Pond Landing, which was really a game changer for Lake Hartwell. It allowed us to be able to promote the lake and to be able to bring events and tournaments in here and really showcase the lake. I think it was a tremendous tool. Green Pond turned 10 years old just before Christmas, I think December 19th, and we still feel like our best is yet to come. So it's a lot of fun. It's a continued labor of love, and the county continues to develop the facility, and we continue to bring tournaments and events in here.
It's like I said, I'd say the top 3 that I've gone to as far as county, as far as facility, launch ramp, weigh-in facility, parking, the whole 9 yards. Actually, I'll have to add. I have to do 4 of that. But what Grove did with Grand Lake, obviously a big push behind that. Smith Lake is absolutely incredible with what they have too with the dual launches. Green Pond is the exact same. That's like that. And then we had an open somewhere in Alabama. Logan Martin, the Logan Martin facility is absolutely phenomenal in that too. But I mean, as far as facility and then accommodating to tournament anglers, you're kind of the guy that makes all that happen, Neil. So,
well, I appreciate it. We have a great team here and a lot of folks that really enjoy spending a lot of time together. Because if we didn't, it would make it really difficult. But it's a group of guys and gals that really care about community, really care about anglers, really care about fishing. And we've done, to our credit, we've done a great job here. Appreciate that.
All right, we'll bring in a Hall of Famer to talk about it. We'll see. It looks like he's getting some help. Can you hear me, Steve?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. No, you look great. Everything's
okay. Well.
What is the word? Copacetic? Is that the correct use of that word? Everything looks good. That's
the correct way. You can't even spell it, so don't say it.
No. Dude, I almost wore that exact AFCO quarter zip.
You told me to wear this. You said
no, I didn't. I almost wore that exact same one, but one time when I wore it, someone commented that they thought it looked like I didn't have a shirt on because I have like bright lighting in here, so now I'm like scared to wear it. But it looks fantastic on you, Steve.
Well, I appreciate that.
Thanks for taking time. I know you were in the JM headquarters. Is this like your office that you're in?
This is my office.
Oh, that would explain probably are those bullets behind you?
No, there might be a bullet back behind me. There's a bunch of challenge coins. I don't think there's any bullets. There's some.
What is that stuff over your other shoulder? Are those like tapes or other shoulder?
Oh yeah, those are all the old fishing hole shows.
Ah, Jerry's old fishing hole shows. Right. Interesting. From the archives. But thanks for jumping on BTL. I greatly appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you doing this, and man, it's great to just see Neil Paul today. So seeing both all together is pretty awesome.
I didn't know if you were listening where we were coming in, but it is amazing how I go back to Alton won that classic, that cold weather classic on that rubber jig deep in the gut on Lake Hartwell, but specifically, I think from Casey Ashley's win on Hartwell when it comes to Bassmasters, when it comes to NPFL, MLF, all of them, just as far as a fishing mecca tournament wise. Would you not agree, Steve, that Hartwell's got to be in the top 3?
Oh yeah, Neil's done such a great job, and the state of South Carolina's did a great job. Hartwell's just an amazing fishery, and it's one of those places that you typically think of lakes with identities, right?
Yep.
And Hartwell has this split personality type identity. It could be Joe Bob one day and Myron the next. I mean, it's just all. I mean, every time we go there, it's different, and I like that about a fishery. So,
absolutely,
test us. That's what we're doing, right? We're testing each other.
All right, we're here to talk about the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame. Perfect time to do that, and I want to kick things off by playing a 2-minute video that Brandon Polinick put together following this past year's induction ceremony. And then from there, we're going to talk with Steve and Neil about the process of you have someone that's done something amazing in the industry. How does it go from that career to enshrinement in the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame? And how can everybody that is watching, listening to this show also get involved in that? But to get just a little kind of peek and behind the scenes look, going to run this from Brandon Polinick. Let me share the entire screen right there, share audio, and here we go.
find on through all these doors. Touring basement couches. Cause I work called a dream and I can't let go.
You'll not only be watching the World Championship of Professional Bass Angling, you'll also be seeing history made.
They got cigars in that dry rub.
What a way to start today. Oh, looky there.
Singing on my song.
That's a big one. I'll tell you what, nothing excites me more than catching a big old bass.
We were just trying to make a living, trying to keep a job for some people and some good
We didn't
guys.
catch any fish right off the bat. We worked real hard before we started catching any fish. And
Don't ever accept that all your best moments were in the past.
we win this time. We only have one other man that's got a chance. Look, bring him in quick because I can't take this anymore.
Sometimes I feel like I'm insane, expecting different fruit from the same damn thing.
And when all this started, I didn't set out and say, well, I'm going to go out and be the first African American to fish the Bass Nights Classic. I was just, wanted to go out and just start fishing, become a tournament fisher. It just so happened that I qualified.
To get older where the flowers hit the tree.
2007, I got a new focus, a new dream, and this is it.
I skipped under the bridge to the left, and I watched my line go and rise off the water, and I got it.
I'll keep on running. Oh, I'm running. I'll keep on running. Cause I love to sing you all my songs. And when you sing along, it brings on something.
Wow.
There you go. That just kind of gives you a little idea of what that night, which is the induction ceremony this past September, there were 5 inducted into it. You've been through that process, Steve. Talk a little bit about what that means and why the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame is important to the sport of bass fishing as a whole.
Well, and I think that it's extremely important. One of the things that we tend to do is as humans, and bass fishermen are better than most in regards to remembering. We remember everything, right? But
yep.
But as humans, we tend to forget. And I'll be honest with you. I had a deal that. And we're doing this documentary now on Fox and Fox Sports. It's called The Cast, and that was kind of kicked down the can was kicked down the road when Ray Scott died, and I'm at an Elite Series tournament, and I bought something like 40 white Stetson hats, and I'm sitting behind them asking the guys, hey, in deference to Ray, let's wear a hat today for on when you wear your fish in.
Yep.
And sadly enough, it was more than one, and there was a couple of the younger guys that were like, Ray who? And I'm like, man, this can't happen. This just can't happen. We can't get so far away from our roots that we forget who we are and what happened to get us here. So that's what really, Bill Fletcher and some of the guys that created the Hall of Fame in the 90s, that's kind of where they were. And then, we picked up that torch and moving forward with it, because we got to have that. I mean, it's one thing for us not to understand how, just Ray Scott again. He filed 270 lawsuits in one day in Alabama. Just for clean water, right? Think if he hadn't have done that, and we wouldn't have Gunnerford, Pickwick, or
Mhm.
Wheeler, all the places that the Alabama River, especially, all the places that wouldn't be as good as they are today, and it's been really a backbone for our sport. So those things are important. And then we've got the Bill Dances and the Roland Martins who captured our excitement and our desire to want to go out there and wear glasses and Roland Martin sunglasses and throw a spinnerbait like Jimmy Houston and catch them in the top of the lift like Bill Dance. I mean, it's just part of what we were. My life growing up in the 80s, or the early 80s, they had the first max fishing contest, and back then George Cochran won that. He was a hometown boy here, and on the television, it would, if whoever caught the fish would say, George Cochran takes control of the boat, and if the next guy if the guy in the back caught the fish, then he would take the control. That's how we fished. My buddies would go out, and there might be 4 of us in a flat bottom, and the guy in the back catches one, and he'd be like, "I'm taking control of the boat." You'd have to do all this switching around. I mean, these things that just work into our psyche and our excitement for just wanting to go catch a fish or out.
Yeah.
And, we've got to put that down, because, like I said, we forget. We'll forget what Brian Kirchhoff did. We'll forget what Alfred Williams did. We'll forget what Glenn Andrews did. And a lot of folks on your show may not even know who Glenn Andrews is. But the Hall of Fame, we need to enshrine that and remember the passions that our grandfathers, and in many cases our great-grandfathers and our great-great-grandfathers had to provide the things that, hey, Matt, you've got a show that surrounding bass fishing. I mean, that's all it is, 100% of the time. And that wouldn't have been possible without some of these the Glenn Andrews and the Ray Scotts and the Fred Arbogast and those folks who really put their passion to work. So it's important. I believe that it's important. It's one of the more important things that I get to take part of every year.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. What I showed there was a little bit of the episode 1 of the cast, which you can watch on Bassmaster's YouTube channel. It's actually like an hour documentary style that kind of goes behind the scenes, talks about the beginning with Ray Scott and all that. I just showed the beginning with the jacket there. I feel like if you're a youth angler, you're getting into high school fishing, I feel at every level you should have to watch that and have somewhat of an understanding, because I think that once you understand the history of the sport, and everybody's going to take a different path to their understanding of it, but once you understand it and what everyone, and it's like that for any sport too, it's just that we happen to love bass fishing, I feel like you respect it more and you understand that you are not the sport, you are part of the sport.
Right.
Which drastically changes your perspective on the whole. If you don't know that, I mean, you are the sport. But if you look back at everything that there is, you're just one little piece of the sport. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing how far it's come so quickly. And Neil, I think you can comment in on this, but one of the amazing things about the Hall of Fame is there are still OG guys. Like you look at that Polinick video, there are still guys that were at that first tournament, at Beaver Lake. There are guys who fished in the first couple Bassmaster Classics. And that's rare to have a sport that's this old and established, but also young enough to where we can still kind of put that in the history books.
Oh, no question. And the cast, we're talking about that. I've watched every episode multiple times and always get up wanting more. And what they've done with that just has been phenomenal. And I can't wait to see what's next, And so, yeah, to your point, it should be required viewing for everybody. And then after Polinick's video, like who's not ready to get out from behind the desk and go fishing today? you know.
Yeah. Well, it's like 7 degrees here right now, so
Well,
I'm a
it's
little
cold. It's not 7 here. I'm looking. It says it's 29 outside, but we've had classics in colder weather than 29. So
Oh my gosh.
I would, and they bite well here when it's cold. So it's probably a really good day out there, and I'm having to watch it through the window.
Yeah, it is. All right, so I just threw up on bassfishinghof.com the alphabetical list of Hall of Famers. And did we decide this year, or it was this year, 100 individuals inducted into the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame now? This is the list that's already, these are people that when you go to the Wonders of Wildlife in Springfield, Missouri, there's the bronze statue of them, there's the memorabilia, all of that. Let's talk about how you get from point A to the end point, which is on the alphabetical list of Hall of Famers. Whichever one of you want to take that. I know, Neil, you're the chair of the nomination committee. So before we kind of dive into it, just an overview of how the process currently works.
Well, let me start with that, Neil, and then you fill in the gaps.
All right.
Because I really think that it's important to note that if you know someone who has made an impact on the bass fishing world, not just your small community, then you have the way it's set up is that you can nominate that person, and we get nominations. My granddaddy should be in the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame, and they're heartwarming. They're fantastic. One of these days, we're going to have a way to recognize those individual nominations. But if the idea that there's this group of people out there that are picking and choosing is not it. This comes from the bass fishing community. The nominations specifically come from the bass fishing community. So if this sport is important to you, help us with knowing who has made those contributions and send in that nomination. Go to the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame website and nominate and do a complete nomination. And then at that point in time, make sure that your complete nomination is actually filled with the right kind of information.
Okay, walk us through that then, Steve. So I
want Neil to talk about the process, but part of that is I've been in this doing this for 40 years, and I got on the board. Somebody asked me to be on the board. I said, okay, sure, and then that kind of thing, and then it started becoming important to me, and I pay attention to the ballots. And Glenn Andrews was on the ballot he's been on the ballot for 15, 20 years. I'd heard Glenn Andrews' name mentioned from Bobby Murray to Roland Martin to Jerry McInnes, et cetera, about how great Glenn Andrews was at one point in time. I just kind of write it off. But he was on the ballot, and not many people really knew who Glenn Andrews was. And so we started digging into Glenn Andrews and realizing the incredible marks that he had made. I mean, he was actually Ray Scott's first tournament director, and he was what they used to do, the World Series of champion for fishing, which included bass, brim, crappie, and catfish. And he was the only guy that ever won that twice, and he probably should have won it a third time. But because of the different things the shenanigans that used to go on, they kind of took one of them away from him. Finished second, and another one to Virgil Ward, which most people, especially the older folks, would remember who Virgil Ward is. Mm-hmm. But he had such a powerful impact on the early stages of building of the sport. I can say pretty accurately that he was responsible for creating and propagating what they call the slip sinker rig back then, but it's called the Texas rig now. And his guiding partner, Dave Hawk, moved to Sam Rayburn and started using the slip sinker rig at Sam Rayburn. It became the Texas rig. And I mean, there's just little stories like that you start learning as you dig into these guys. And so we put that information out on who Glenn Andrews was. And the year he was inducted was with Mike Iaconelli, and I think his votes for getting into the Hall of Fame were double that of Mike Iaconelli. And so part of the process is get your information, figure out what that person has done. You know, it's not just winning tournaments. You know, we have a conservation and education, all part of this, because it's such an important, bass fishing is such a, you know, we're conserving the game, we're conserving the fish, we're conserving the education. And so have your information there and make sure it's complete. And then from that point, Neil takes that, and Neil, I'll let you pick it up and tell everybody how we go from getting the nomination to moving forward.
Well, and thank you, Steve. And it's, you know, we hang on to kind of three pillars: celebrate, promote, and preserve the sport of bass fishing, which is what the pillars to the Hall of Fame. And the nomination process, just kind of an overview. The nomination process typically opens late in the year. Like, for example, it opened the latter stages of 2024, and it remains open through January 15th of 25. So next week, use the link on the website. You can submit a nomination form, obviously complete with any kind of resume or background information that you have. And, you know, again, like to Steve's, you know, to what Steve was saying earlier, you know, we've had nominations sent in, you know, so-and-so nominated so-and-so, and for reasons why he should be inducted, you know, the answer was, why not, you know, or nothing else needs to be said. Well, it actually does. We need to tell a story. And if this person is in your mind, if this person is worthy of being in the Hall of Fame, then there's a story to tell. And so that nomination process closes next week. And then we take those nominations as a nominations committee, and then we have a master list that we work from as well. So if you nominate somebody in a given year and they don't make the ballot or they're not inducted, it doesn't mean those go in the garbage. We have a master list that those names are placed on, and then our nominations committee, we meet, and it's generally a 2 to 3 hour sit down, and you know, and there's a lot of homework done ahead of time. So the nominations committee receives the nominations. We get the information, we comb through them, we study them, we review them, and then we have a meeting, and then we take those nominations along with the master list, and we formulate a generally between 10 and 12, maybe a dozen candidates, up to as many as 25, that we present to the board as a whole for any ratification, discussion, to assemble a ballot. And then when that ballot is put together, so it could be anywhere, it could be as few as 10 names, it could be as many as 25 names, which is in coordinates with our bylaws. That ballot is then sent to the 30-member selection panel. That is a volunteer panel that serves the Hall of Fame in selection only. So this 30-member selection panel votes, as well as past Hall of Famers. So anybody that has a blue jacket that's a living member of the Hall of Fame receives a ballot, just kind of like the Heisman Trophy, you know. And
so that selection panel is media people in the
industry.
It's
industry people. It's industry representatives. There's a couple of anglers that make up that selection panel. It's industry reps and folks,
and all living.
I would like to add, as far as that selection panel is concerned, that's 30 guys that we probably angst over more than we do, because obviously we don't vote. The board itself doesn't vote on the Hall of Fame class. But we do want to pick guys. We feel like we have 30 exceptional representatives of the bass fishing community, and they change. You serve a 3-year term, and then we're constantly looking. Neil will tell you that he'll see somebody and that you all know or whatever, and say, hey man, you seem really keyed into the history and the passion of bass fishing. Would you mind serving on our selection panel? I mean, we're not just picking people off the street, right? We're actually doing. I feel like as a board we angst more over the selection panel than we do the actual Hall of Fame group, because obviously we don't vote on that. We just process that for them, and it's really kind of a neat thing to be a part of that. A lot of people want to do it, and they do it for a year, and it becomes a little bit more work than they want to do, and they drop off, and that's fine. We want those guys and ladies who are really keyed into that. And,
okay. So you have your nominations, which are open through the 15th. The nominations then go to the nomination committee, which takes this big pool of nominations for the Hall of Fame, pares it down to something that's manageable. You said between sometimes 10 to 20 people. Then that list, which is put together by the nomination committee, then goes out to the selection panel.
No, it goes to the board first.
Oh, it goes to the board first.
Yeah.
Yes, for discussion on that.
Yes.
And if anyone had been left out, if anyone needs to be included, and once the board agrees on it, then that goes out to the selection panel, who then vote on the ranking system.
Yeah, there's a system in place. It's like a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Okay.
And it's the selection panel and the living members of the Hall of Fame. And there's a window of time that they get that information. And then also what it's sent out, they just don't get a ballot with a list of 10, 15 names, whatever the ballot looks like in that particular year. They get, our board is a tremendous board. Our board is we have a tremendous makeup of industry people, to include writers and some historians and things like that. And we have a group that works really hard behind the scenes to take that information when it comes in, and they assemble a bio. Basically, they summarize that information into a bio. And so when the ballot goes out to the living Hall of Famers and to the selection panel, they receive a bio. What I compare it to, if you've ever gone through like a media guide for sports.
Yep.
And you look at the running back or the quarterback in the football guide, and he's got there's a bio that tells you all about him, all the way back to his early playing days, and gives you all his stats and his glory, and that's what these folks receive. So you're not just getting a blind list of names to then assemble a vote for. You get a bio that goes with each one, and then you're able to take that information and then sit down and make your selection accordingly.
And then there is not a minimum or a maximum. It's not you have to induct. I think that's important on this. I know it's not like, oh, we had to induct this many this year, so there are guys that got in. I mean, it's really on a year-to-year basis on how many are inducted into the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame, correct?
That's correct.
And let me tell you how that's worked in the past, because of there will be 20, 25 names at times on the ballot, and they go to those guys, and everybody, so there's this point system, and really we would like to keep the number small, but there's times like last year when the points were so close for the top 5 that it just didn't. I mean, there was the clear break that comes in there is important. So it's, we may get to some point in time. I can remember, I'm a baseball fan. Ozzie Smith got in, and he was the only guy that got inducted in the Baseball Hall of Fame the year he was inducted. because we follow those same Hall of Fames. So,
Okay.
and that may happen at some point in time with the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame. But right now, we have a lot of excitement around the hall. We have a lot of folks who are being nominated, and we need more. We want to make it complete, but it's not as simple as just saying, "Oh, we're going to induct 1, 2, 3, 4, 5." I mean,
Yeah.
we angst over that as well, because 5 is a lot to induct in one.
It is, and you use that Andrews as a example of someone who deserved to be in the Hall of Fame, that maybe there wasn't a lot of information, public information, where like Ray Scott type information, Bob Cobb, that type of thing, to where once someone was like, hey, this guy I think is a good candidate for the Hall of Fame, submitted a quality Hall of Fame submission. You guys looked at it. There's probably, okay, who is it? Then you start reading it and you're like, okay, this, you check it out at good. And that's a perfect example of an induction into the Hall of Fame of someone who deserved it. And that's why the nominations are public and available for anyone to nominate who they want for the Hall of Fame.
Right. Well, we all have our regional.
Yep.
I don't want to say bias, because that's not true. We just have our knowledge, and it starts at home, and it emanates out, and so there's what we try to do with the selection panel, and we encourage all of our board members and all of our selection panel members to nominate someone. But we look for, if you look at our selection panel, we're represented from California to New York, Florida to Michigan. Our board is the same way, because there are people. I mean, a good example of this is Don Iovino. Now, if you're from Oklahoma and you're not really into bass fishing, you probably don't know who Don Iovino is, but Don Iovino probably deserves to be on the ballot, deserves to be voted in. I think he is on the ballot, but if he's not getting voted in, then maybe there's not enough information for the guy that is in New York and Michigan and Florida and Texas to understand what, if you're from California, you know who Don Iovino is. No problem.
Well, and let me jump in there, Stephen. You mentioned that example. You said that he's not on the ballot. He's on the master list, and so he's just, it's the process of getting to the ballot. So you said the word ballot. I don't want people to think there's already a ballot.
Yeah. So the master list,
list.
If people get like resubmitted, so let's just say,
well, I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example of somebody. I just completed my 3rd year on the board, and when I came in, Lonnie Stanley was on the master list, but he had not. There had been he was on the master list, and there had been several ballot years where he was on the ballot and was just like this close, just this close. It was this close, and we had a board member that went back and submitted an entire new nomination on Lonnie Stanley, and that nomination was so thorough, it pulled even more information and more background than even what we had before. So it gave us there was an example like Steve mentioned, it gave us more information than to go on. So then when that bio was put together along with what was already in the files for Lonnie Stanley, then it gave people a more perspective and a little bit more history into his contributions to the sport, not only as a lure designer, but an angler. And subsequently he was on the ballot and made it in that next year. So so the idea that there's this room full of guys that sit around and just pull 5 names out of the air every year to put in the Hall of Fame, it's a far cry from that. But I would also challenge anybody watching or listening to this show that if you've got somebody that you're passionate about and somebody that you feel strongly needs to be in the Hall Fame, it's a big old sport out there, and I would challenge you to submit that form, get that information in, and give us an opportunity to pass it along to the folks that are going to make those decisions.
Right. And one of the things to keep in mind there is, it's real easy some of the worst mistakes that we make is trying to compare ourselves to other sports. And we do mimic in the Hall of Fame what the Baseball Hall of Fame does, what the NFL Football Hall of Fame does, those kind of things. We take cues from them, we learn from them, we figure out ways to do that. But the difference in our sport and their sport is, Neil just said, we got a big old sport out there, and we have the same amount of land mass as baseball and football, including Japan and Australia and all of Canada and all of basically all of North America. But we don't have CBS, ABC, and NBC playing our stuff constantly to where there is the media that takes care of this is much, much smaller. And so our knowledge of what's going on if you're in Arkansas, what's going on in California or New York, et cetera, is so much smaller. Mm-hmm. And so we need help. I mean, we know that there are people in Florida who deserve to be in the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame. We know there's people in California. We know there's people in New York, et cetera. But we don't know what a guy in Arkansas can sit down and learn about Major League Baseball. Like, it's in every newspaper. It's in magazines. It's all over the world. I mean, we have Bass Talk Live, and we have Bassmaster, and we have MLF and .com. I mean, our grounded grounds of information there are much smaller for us. So we need people who are passionate about the sport to get involved in the Hall of Fame.
Bass Fishing, bassfishinghof.com. If you go under the About, there's road to induction history, and then there's also bylaws. I do want to touch on this. So the first class was inducted in 2001, I believe. The selection process is a little bit different in 2025 than it was in 2001 and probably some of the subsequent years, which I don't know what it was like back then. I just know it's different now, and that the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame in its current state is a much different process than those early years.
Oh, so much different. I mean, and I've been involved for quite a while. I actually sat in on the meetings that created the Hall of Fame back in '99, and and so I mean, but there's you have to go through those processes. That's part of life, and nobody's going to sit down and say that first year we had Ray Scott and Roland Martin and Rick Clunn and Larry Nixon and Bobby Murray, and nobody's arguing with any of that. And then we, and are for the first 5 or 6 years, and then we go for another 5, and they're trying to figure this thing out, and we're still working on it. We want to have the best representatives that there can be, but we want the public to understand that this isn't just a Hall of Fame for the guy who catches the most. This is the Hall of Fame for the guy or entity that comes up with a way to follow the conserve, protect, educate, etc., and promote the sport of bass fishing. It's not just about who catches the most. I mean,
we would
have a much smaller Hall of Fame, and we still. I mean, Rick Clunn just retired.
Yeah, I showed that picture. How does he look better now than he did 30 years ago?
He's an enigma, man. He is an enigma.
Neil, you're going to say something about that?
I was just going to say that that's something that we talk about a lot in our calls when we're coming through information and sometimes it comes down to when we're having discussions of this person versus this person in terms of, who makes a ballot. And we really put a lot into celebrate, promote, and preserve. I can't recall in my 3 years on the board a time that we've had a phone conversation that focused on how many bags, how many limits, how much weight did he catch, but rather we do focus a lot on how did they celebrate, promote, and preserve the sport of bass fishing. And for different people, it's different ways. It's, how did he serve the industry? How did he serve his fellow anglers? How did he serve the industry as a whole from a tournament? How did he represent himself as an angler or whatever? So there's I want to make sure I mention that. And then two, also, and something that we really haven't touched on here is there's another process that we have in our meritorious service awards. And those are, some of those folks are Hall of Fame worthy. Some of them may fall just short of being a Hall of Fame inductee, but we have a meritorious service award. If you've got somebody that you're really passionate about, that's celebrated and promoted and preserved the sport of bass fishing, but
on
a regional basis, and just may not be quite, Hall of Fame worthy from a big, large platform, nationwide or even worldwide in some situations. And so we typically honor those recipients during Red Crest in the spring, and then at the Classic in the spring. We have the Hall of Fame does a little social mixer type of event at each one of those championships, and typically try and honor and recognize somebody with a meritorious service award at those events. So that's another place that we're involved. And then obviously, I think I just saw you scrolling, and then our the Ray Mirsky Lifetime Achievement Award. And I think there's only been 3 of those given. I think obviously Ray Mirsky, Ray Scott, and then this past year we recognized Rick Clun. So I did
one of the things I want to add to what Neil was talking about with the preserve and the promote part of Bass Fishing Hall of Fame. One of the people who pushes that more than anybody, and it's kind of neat to hear him say it, is Kevin Van Dam.
Yep.
We all know what Kevin Van Dam does on the water, but if you come to the Hall of Fame, you're going to learn a little bit about what Kevin Van Dam does on the land. When his feet's on terra firma, and the way that he preserves and promotes our sport is incredible. And the same with Michael Iaconelli. Now they've all had the accolades of classics and AOYs and tournament wins and that kind of thing, which those still count for something, right? But they don't stop there. And Bill Dance didn't stop there. Roland Martin didn't stop there. And so there's that is a very key component to everything that we do. And I love the fact that those guys get that part of it. And they're on, some of them are on the board, and they're the reason they show up at the banquet. I mean, they show up at the banquet for that, the actual preserve and promoting, because their competition days are over. But they understand that the passion is real, and that there's things that we need to remember, and there's things that we need to move forward from, and go away and get to other places. And I love that about them. And that's a big piece of it. Not the only piece, not the biggest piece, but it is a big piece.
It is cool to see, the current angler, well, Kevin is intimidating as hell, because if you thought he was dialed in when he's trying to crank a ledge on Kentucky Lake, like, he's exactly like that off the water. So it's always like you feel like you don't have your life in order if you spend a couple hours with Kevin Van Dam, because that guy, I feel like, gets more accomplished in an hour than I do in a year and a half. And then it's cool to see the passion. You know, we started the show with that Brandon Polinick 2.5 minute thing. Like, cool to see the passion that he has as an angler in his 30s with a young family who, in all likelihood, will one day be in the Hall of Fame. But to be able to see, you know, Ray Scott's boots and Forrest Wood's hat and Rick Cludd's reel and all that stuff. I mean, there's just, if it's not for the Hall of Fame, that stuff doesn't exist. And if it does, it's scattered in archives or museums across the entire country where you don't get it all in one spot to understand what an impact this sport has had on so many people.
Well, and let me jump to that point and give a lot of credit to Johnny Morris and the folks at Bass Pro Shops who have allowed us and given us the space to display this memorabilia and enshrine a permanent landing spot for these people to be recognized and celebrated, and for us as a board and as a Hall of Fame to celebrate, promote, and preserve our sport and the wonders of wildlife, aquarium and museum and natural history, that whole deal there in Springfield, and what Mr. Morris and his people have allowed us to do there has been phenomenal, and we couldn't have done it without him. So I do want to make sure that we give recognition there as well.
Yeah, and he's a part of it. Like, he's there every year that he can be there. He speaks. He's down in the Hall of Fame when the Blue Jackets are given out. It's important to him. And I said this with Kevin yesterday. I think a lot of people forget Johnny Morris is a tournament bass angler with Bassmaster Classics under his belt. And like these guys that are around him with Blue Jackets, he's obviously in it as well. They're like his buddies. They're like, you know, your guy that you were fishing with when you were 20 years old, what Steve talked about, you know, at the beginning of the show in the John boat with the 4 guys. It just so happens that it's, you know, Rick Cludd and Larry Nixon and Stacy King and guys like that who are now in their mid 70s. You see them like look at each other and be like, dang, this has been a pretty good ride.
Yeah, it's amazing to see that older group get together. We always have one table, and it's funny. I just go and stand next to it and listen to some of the stories they tell. And it's like Hank Parker was telling a story with, you know, it was Tommy Martin and Larry Nixon and Cochran and Stacy King and Basil Bacon and everything. And Hank was telling the first time he ever met Roland Martin, or I think it was Tommy Martin on the water, and Tommy comes up to him and says, "Son, if you want to make it in this sport, you're gonna have to slow down." You know, and that was in the 70s, him doing that, you know, and they remember all these interactions, and those are important. And so one of the things that Neil pointed out is to our actual hall, that the enshrinement hall, what I think that has to be, that you have to see it, one, and it's grown. We've almost doubled our floor space in the last year, which is incredible, and thanks to Johnny Morris. But what you see in there, and in my early life, I was an outdoor writer, a sports writer for a newspaper, and I had to fight for, you know, to get a headline, to get a story in the paper about George Cochran winning the Classic and Mark Davis winning the Classic and those kind of things, they would say, is that really a sport? You know, is bass fishing really a sport? And I mean, I can remember an editor asking me one time, said, well, do they drink beer when they're out there doing that? Or, you know, what, you know, do they use bigger bobbers or whatever? I mean, you know, they don't understand the sport. So now we have an enshrinement hall, and millions of people walk through that. And not only are you going to see plaques and the bronze things of the inductees, but you're going to see a history of how this sport kind of came to fruition. You're going to see the people. You're going to see videos of Hall of Fame catches. You're going to see how this thing started in the 1800s with guys stocking bass around the country in milk cans. You're going to see, you know, if you just soak it in, you're going to say, oh, man, this is much bigger than my pond, Farmer Farmer Brown's Pond or the lake that I live on. This is much bigger, and maybe they'll understand a little bit about our sport, because it's our best opportunity to get folks who aren't channel surfing to, they're coming to see an incredible aquarium, and they walk through a hall that is educational at the forefront. I mean, it's going to let people know, oh my gosh, there's a lot more to what we love. And if you love this sport, you're going to see things that you're like, holy cow, just like what you were saying. There's the boots, there's the hat, there's this. I didn't know that Berkeley Bedell was actually a person. I didn't know that Arbogast did this, or I didn't know that Cordell did this. I didn't know these things, and I didn't know that this, there may even be a story in there of, Ray Scott and Bob Cobb trying to get catch and release started, and basically had to threaten game wardens with baseball bats that you're going to let us put these fish back in the water.
Yeah, it's really cool.
And even and again, to go back, I was the most recent episode of the cast. I thoroughly enjoyed here. A lot of people don't know that Bass Pro Shop started in the back corner of a liquor store.
You can go see it while you're there. You can literally walk through the recreation that's identical to what it was.
And Johnny Morris talking about, think about this, that a gentleman that had the foresight, he carried a Kodak camera around the tournaments and took pictures of anglers winning baits. What's the most searched, the most viewed gallery on Bassmaster.com is the top baits each week after the tournament. And Johnny was doing this 50 years ago, was taking pictures of baits with a Kodak camera, tried to convince the local, the discount sporting goods store to try and carry those baits. They couldn't carry them. His dad signed a $10,000 note for him to go to Oklahoma and load up a U-Haul truck with tackle to come back and sell out of the liquor store, and Bass Pro Shops was born. And if you don't have, things like that take place in your sport, I mean, this is still, people have been fishing. I mean, we can get the Bible out and tell stories about people fishing, right? But our sport in the world that we have today is still relatively new, but it's up to us and you as a fan of the sport to go out and help us dig up those stories that took place somewhere between the disciples throwing the net out on one side of the boat and kind of the Van Dam experience. We got to find those stories between those ends and tell them.
I'll say this real quick, like not a sales pitch for it, but Springfield and Bass Pro Shops, the Wonders of Wildlife Museum, regardless of if you have young kids, older kids, a wife, a significant other who loves fishing, hates fishing, doesn't fish, you can spend a weekend there and everybody will be happy. You're going to spend a little bit of money, but everybody will be happy. There's something there for everybody. It is the best 2 to 3 day weekend vacation, easy in, easy out, and well worth the time to see the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame. You'll have a sense of pride. I remember every time I walk down those steps and get to it, there's like a sense of pride where it's like, man, like this is what I love. And I was so excited that I got to take my girlfriend there so she could see it, like, and kind of understand what it was all about. And she gets out and was like, man, I didn't understand. Like it's such a cool experience. Yeah. And then you surround it with the fact that you're at Bass Pro Shops and the aquarium and the museum and the history. And if you're looking for a place to go for a weekend getaway, it's 10 out of 10.
Well, and I would add to that this Hall of Fame is, and that the aquarium is something that you pay to get into, and the Hall of Fame is part of it. But that Hall of Fame is your Hall of Fame. It's not just Neil's and Matt's and mine. It's whoever's listening to this. This is your Hall of Fame. And if you want it to be what you want it, you've got ideas for it. We give you that opportunity once a year, every year, during the nomination process, and then during the actual banquet itself. Now we are starting to bust at the seams a little bit, but it's not an invite thing. You can get on the website, bassfishinghof.com. Buy
I didn't know if we were going to promote that. I know last year or this past year we had to put up about 6 more tables, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I would rather have someone who's truly passionate about the sport to come walk in that room and sit down. I mean, while we can.
Oh yeah, no, I know there's BTL listeners that have done it, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, for whatever was it, less than $100 or $100 a ticket or what?" They're like, "I literally was around every legend that I've ever heard about, seen, watched, whatever, and then had a drink with them, chatted with all the guys. Like it is a once, and not a once in a lifetime because it happens every year, but it's like the only place where all those guys are together. They're in a good mood. They're there. You know, you do it at the Classic. You wait in line to meet Rick Clunn or to shake Hank Parker's hand. Here they're just milling around and they're chatting with each other. And if you appreciate the history, it's pretty cool.
It is the best night in fishing. 100%.
I would agree with that.
Not just bass fishing, in fishing.
Classic night is pretty cool too. Like the day, that afternoon from winning the Classic to the Champions Toast to all that. But yeah, you're right.
It is. But I'll tell you what I learned this year was in a year that, from an industry standpoint, in the fishing world, there was a lot of divisiveness in fishing this year. And that week in Springfield, that night in Springfield,
yeah.
If anybody brought it, they left it in the parking lot.
They do, and we all do, and my wife works on the Hall of Fame, and she insists everybody take their hat off when they, and that's the metaphorical hat, and you know we come into there. You'll have Bruce Stanton with Pradco on the board, and Dan Quinn with Rapala on the board. You'll have a Daiwa guy on the board and a Shimano guy on the board, and we made an effort because we want it to be, take your hat off. There's just as many MLF guys as there are BASS guys on the board, and we try to spread them around the country, and we've got people from all over, and I mean, because it's truly. It's the one night of the year for someone to come to a banquet and take your hat off. I've watched Boyd Duckett and Chase Anderson share a drink or a handshake or a word or two, and it's just, hey, they're there for one purpose: to preserve, promote, and
celebrate the sport of
that. I thought they were both there to duel it out in the auction.
Yeah, well,
everybody has a role.
But I think this has been a really good hour plus to kind of get an understanding of the Hall of Fame. I want to say, so there's two things that aren't like very sexy, and that's history and conservation. Yeah. So that's why we struggle to get this stuff out. I would challenge people that if you're going to look for the history of the sport, the Bass Fishing HOF website that I'll pull up right now, that's the number one of the places you could go. The next is that Bass is currently updating is the cast. You can see all the stuff on the right side of the screen there. That's a great little snippet, histories of the sport, things you'll watch every single one and you'll go, I didn't know that existed. And then the third and final that is a drastically underrated website is Terry Battisi's Bass Fishing Archives. It's a bass-archives.com, and you can go down here and he updates stuff like this. Like here's side scan from 1986, season at a glance, the 1973 Bassmaster Classic. This website is a treasure in the past, and you take all three of those and combine them, and you will have a very good understanding of where this sport started, where it's been, and where it's headed. And I think the more you also know about the past gives you a lot more context into what is happening over the last several years, what has happened, what will happen, just puts it into perspective and takes it out of a microscope of this is the only thing, man. There's a lot of history to this sport, and both of you gentlemen, a big part in preserving that keeping it on and promoting it.
Thank you. And thank you for this opportunity too. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt.
Hey, I would be remiss. Well, I don't sing. Do you sing, Neil?
Not well, and only in the shower, but it's Steve's birthday, so we want to say
Oh,
happy
come
birthday.
on.
Yeah.
Happy birthday,
It was
Steve.
Steve Bowman's 50th birthday today.
Oh, thank you.
So
Yeah.
happy birthday.
Hello.
Thank you for
Again.
jumping on. And I do want to also say I am really looking forward. Neil, I don't know if you know this, but Seisner and I went in at the auction, and we last year we got outbid by a lovely couple for the frog hunt with Steve Bowman. And then I got pictures of it, and I told Seisner, I said, dude, we're getting the damn trip this year. So we got it, we split it, and in June we are headed to Arkansas for a bona fide, my first legit frog hunt. And I couldn't be more excited with Hall of Famer
You guys will never be the same again.
Have you done a frog hunt before?
I actually have.
It looks awesome.
Did I go on that one with you?
No. So this goes back to some of my younger years growing up in the low country of South Carolina. So it was a low country South Carolina frog hunt.
There's last year's frog hunt.
Look at that.
So
that's a limit of bullfrogs right there.
That's 2 limits of bullfrogs right there. I mean,
that's impressive.
Hand grabbed, and we even let them hand grab an alligator or 2. So
yeah, I will not be doing that. Wait, in Arkansas, there's gators?
Oh yeah, there's everything in Arkansas.
No way, I don't believe that,
dude. Oh yeah.
Hey Steve. One thing, make sure Pangrak there, make sure he leaves his phone in the truck when you take him hunting. We've got one of his cell phones at the bottom of Lake Hartwell.
Oh yeah, I know exactly where it is. I tried looking for it on LiveScope last year.
Just make sure he leaves his phone in the truck.
Oh, I spent a lot of money in the Anderson economy. Unplanned. I had to pay for a hotel room and a VRBO and an additional cell phone all in a 24-hour span. I didn't realize. So the thing slid out of my hood into the lake, Steve. Well, I hadn't been to the VRBO. It was the first day of practice. It's dark out. I had no way to get a hold of anybody. I don't know anybody's numbers. I put it at a ramp where I was the only guy. I literally drove until I saw a Microtel hotel, got a room, plugged the boat in, had to get my laptop out, go connect to that Wi-Fi, and then send a Facebook message to Andrew Upshaw, who doesn't check his Facebook messages, to be like, hey, I'm in a bit of a pickle here. Finally got back. It was just a disaster. But yeah, so I put an extra $1,500 into the economy.
Can you imagine what the world would be like without a cell phone? How in the world did Rick Clunn become Rick Clunn without a cell phone?
I don't know, but I did travel with Harold Allen for a number of years, and he did still travel by paper maps. So he would, I'm not kidding. He would have the atlas out, and he would have like written down, he traveled in that red truck, like where every turn was and stuff. And if I was driving and missed a turn, he would not say anything. We drove out over an hour the wrong way one time. This is before I had like a GPS on it. And when I asked him why, he said, you missed your turn an hour ago. And I said, well, that would have been handy. And he goes, Matthew, I'm just riding.
Oh, Harold.
Yeah.
I mean, and we could sit here and talk about some of like the Harold Sharps and our Harold Allens. I mean, Harold Sharp and Harold Allen, stories from those guys. I mean, and it really, I mean, I fish tournaments and hang out with guys, and they all love hearing that. Well, that's what we're about, right? Nobody wants to forget Harold Allen. Nobody wants to forget Harold Sharp or Rick Clunn or Ray Scott or Forrest Wood or Glenn Andrews. Nobody wants to forget those guys. And that's really what this show's been about. Let's don't forget them. Let's don't forget that they did something without a cell phone, and without the electronics. They did it with a passion and an experience and a nose for fishing that we've got to keep that alive, right? Because when you get out there on the water, Matt, you shouldn't have your phone.
There you go. Nominations open to the 15th. BassFishingHOF.com. Encourage you, if there's someone that you feel after this show is qualified on all of those categories, to submit a person for the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame for the consideration. And who knows, maybe, you might go to Springfield, Missouri, and there's a bronze plaque on the wall, and you're like, dude, I had a part in getting that bronze plaque on a wall that's going to live in that Hall of Fame forever. So anything else?
Don't forget the Meritorious Service Awards. Those
Yep.
guys are so important. One of the guys on there is Ronnie Everett and Porter Everett, and from here in Arkansas. And no, he didn't change the world of bass fishing for the world. He changed the world of bass fishing for a lot of people in Arkansas. And those guys are equally as important. They just may not get the same kind of recognition that a Rick Clunn and Ray Scott gets, but those help us make sure that we enshrine everyone that deserves to be enshrined. And it's up to you. It's on our shoulders to make it happen. But really and truly, there's no way that our shoulders are broad enough to carry the entire world of bass fishing. We just can't do it alone. We need you.
That'll work. Don't get too crazy tonight during the birthday party, Steve.
Dude, I'll be in bed by 8 o'clock.
All right. Thanks for jumping on. I appreciate it, Steve. Neil, thank you very much. Bass Fishing HOF. Thanks for all you do for the sport, for the industry, what you've done with Hartwell. I'm sure the only thing people that don't like you are the spotted bass in the lake.
No, there's a few of the local anglers that don't like me either, but it's okay.
Well, there's also a few of those local anglers that are probably want a little bit of money because of some of the tournaments and trails that have come to the area.
Yep.
So thanks, Neil.
Appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. See ya. All right. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll wrap things up. We have an in-studio guest tomorrow. Matt Adams in studio, but first commercial break. We'll be back right after this. Pro Bass Adventures is reinventing Mexico bass fishing. With boats equipped with 12-inch Garmin units and LiveScope Plus, free loaner fishing rods, and no-cost airport transportation, Pro Bass Adventures is proudly putting you in the best position for success. Pro Bass Adventures has lodges on Lake Baccarat and Lake El Salto, Mexico's two best trophy largemouth bass lakes. Visit probassadventures.com or email probassadventures@gmail.com. The official Mexico fishing lodge of Bass Talk Live. This is Gamakatsu's new Nano Alpha line of hooks. If it looks familiar, that's because they are. It's the same shapes and sizes in the round bend and the EWG and in the new Horizon head that you know and love from Gamakatsu, but there are a couple new features with this Nano Alpha, which is this little green label that you see on the packaging. First off, 2 times faster hook penetration. That's because of the Nano Alpha smooth coating on it, and also it is 4 times more corrosion resistant. Check it out, Nano Alpha.
I've been using Sunline Shooter for the majority of my career. Millions of dollars made, lots of bass caught, and the gnarly, gnarly stuff. If you need a abrasion resistant, tough fishing line for the really, really mean stuff, Sunline Shooter is for you.
Everything you need, one legendary brand. Top 100, Strike King. Gear that just plain works. Cast after cast after cast. any fish, any water.
All right, wrapping things up here on a Tuesday, very chilly Tuesday. In-studio guest. I've met him on the water a couple times, actually. We actually had some conversations. We were on Lake Eufaula, and he rolled by, and I was fishing, and I was working on a solid, I think, 10-pound limit. And he's like, man, I got 18, and I don't know where to go. You got any suggestions? And I was like, excuse me? And he's like, yeah, I pulled up on a point and put a quick 18 in the boat. Now I don't know how to catch any giants. Matt Adams is in studio. He's actually getting his rig, just like Hamner was in studio last year. He's getting his rig rigged by Scott and the guys at the Bass Tank. So I'm going to take advantage of that. Narrowly missed making the 2025 Bass Master Elite Series. So we will have him in studio to talk about kind of his thoughts on the Opens, taking another run at it, the new EQ system, the whole 9 yards. So Matt Adams in studio tomorrow. Then we return with the first show of 2025 with Frank Scalish on Thursday. And then also the first episode of Guide Day will drop on Friday. Jimmy Easterling is highlighted on that show. We're actually recording that show today that will run on Friday, but you want to talk about Lake Washita and some of those lakes in Arkansas. The guy's really good with his electronics. He can also power fish them, and a surprising amount of 7 to 10 pound bass that come out of those lakes. A lot of giant crappie as well. So a full week of BTL. Followed by another full week of BTL next week. I get my boat into the Bass Tank at the end of this week to get it compliant with open EQ regulations. Looking forward to getting the breakaway mounts for the power brake, so I can pop those things off during competition days. And then as I crappie fish and fish around the house, I can put them right back on. I think I'm going with a little different configuration up front, keeping it under 15 or 18 inches off the front deck. I'm going with one bigger screen, actually reducing the number of screens, putting a backup system in, all sorts of little stuff that Scott suggested. And then I'm like, yeah, no, that sounds like an awesome idea. So looking forward to getting that rig done. And then, dude, it's time to start the EQ season right over Valentine's Day in February is when that kicks off at Sam Rayburn. It'll be interesting to see how that fishery is. A couple tournaments before that, they just had a BFL there. It took almost 30 pounds to win, but only 15 to get into the top 10. And then there's a Texas team trail the week before we're there. So those fish are used to getting a lot of pressure, though. It's kind of like Gunnersville. It doesn't matter how many boats are in any of the parking lots, it still just keeps kicking out crazy fish. So big shout out to Steve Bowman, Neil Paul, talking about the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame. Highly suggest going there, taking a look at it. If there's someone that you think is worthy of it that is not currently in the Hall of Fame already, fill it out, take some time, do your research, and the better you do with the nomination, the better chance it is that it finds its way onto the ballot. So this has been another edition of BTL Bass Talk Live. Same time, same place tomorrow. See ya.